Hello, guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing part 211 of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights. We'll be taking a look at some of the wonderful mods people have been making and use them to talk about some of the wonderful biodiversity that we share our world with. So today, we've got a couple subspecies, we've got a couple cool animals, we've got a returning one. But we've got quite a cool assortment of animals today. Got some fish, some birds. So kind of like a roundabout way. We got a lot of everything. So let's have a look at our first animal today. So this first one is an exhibit species done by a new modder. Um, as you can see, the splendid poison dart frog, done by Nicole Lynn. That's, I believe, how you say their name. So a new modder, really cool to see a new modder on the scene. And starting off with sadly an extinct species of poison dart frog. So let's see if we can find one in the light, as you always like to do. This one looks about in the light as you'll get, but this is a really, really cool little guy. So this is the splendid poison dart frog, or Ulphagia spigosa. This guy's an extinct species of dart frog that was endemic to the eastern end of the Cordillera Cordillera de Talamanca in western Panama, and its original habitats were humid lowland and mountain forests. So these guys were pretty basic looking frogs. They were adult frogs reached about 28 to 31 millimeters in snout to vent length. So that's from their snout to their butt, and were bright red in color, just like this. So they were very basic colored in terms of poison dart frogs. They were still bright colored, but they were just the one color, not like all these different patterns that you get in other species. So in terms of its habitat, these guys inhabited cloud forests in the western Panama's Corral de Talamanca, Manca, and was diurnal in a terrestrial species, so they typically walked around the ground and came out during the day, and they are observed between 1,140 to 1,410 meters above sea level. So in terms of life cycle, not too much distinct from other poison dart frogs in its genus. The males fought for each other for good foraging and egg deposition sites, and the females frogs would care for the eggs and tadpoles. She would lay them on leaf litter, but then after they hatched, she would carry the tadpoles into small pools of water and collect in plant leaves like bromeliads and things like that. And she would have laid unfertilized eggs to feed her tadpoles. So very similar to other members of the genus. So the sad thing, as I mentioned as well, it is extinct. This is sadly a fate that could happen without good conservation work to other species of dart frogs. These are ones that sadly became extinct because of a lot of the things that are infecting poison dart frogs to this day. So they were formerly common in their small range, but is now classified extinct. Scientists cite that the amphibian chytrid fungus, which is a really bad impact, not just in frogs in South America and Central America, but across the world, even in New Zealand, we're very worried about chytrid fungus for our native frog species. But then it began to spread through the region where it lived in 1996. And then a few years after the last reported sighting of the splendid poison dart frog in 1992. So it's been missing for about 30 years. And despite several comprehensive surveys of its range in subsequent decades, the species, which was easily visible because it's bright red and diurnal, has not been relocated and was officially declared extinct in 2020. So I know it's declaring an animal's extinct quite hard, but this is sadly, potentially a case where it could be extinct. Though, these are very remote areas, and even with surveys, you just don't know what you're looking for. There are a lot of surveys will find like 20 species that have been rediscovered in 50 years or whatever. It is possible it's still around, but odds are that it's most likely extinct. But because so many frogs were harvested for the international pet trade, scientists believe that there may be some alive in captivity when someone's just not really telling us. So that'd be a really cool thing to find out, and then that would be the start of a breeding program. So they could potentially be extinct in the wild, which is a thing. Any of these captive ones could form a breeding program to be re-released and help stuff like that with other species like the Lake Titicaca frog, which is extinct in the wild and something like that. So it's really cool to, if that ever became a thing, or maybe we find them again in the wild. There's so many species that are rediscovered after years and years of not being sighted, and I like following those stories. of that. But yeah, anyway, Nicole Lynn, you did a great job. Great first mod. I do love talking about these funky little species. So that's a cool one there. We are going to move on to a next one done by a more permanent fixture in our modding stuff. So we've got next by Jaquatics, the 5-stripe wrasse, or the red ribbon wrasse, which I much prefer that name, to be completely honest. The red ribbon wrasse. I think, to me, it just sounds like a lot nicer as well. So let's see if we can spot one that's diving. Oh, they're all coming out on land at the moment. That's all right. We'll just carry on. Let's zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. So this is the 5-stripe wrasse, as I mentioned, the also known as the red ribbon wrasse. These guys are species of ray-finned fish, a type of wrasse in the family Labyrinidae, and are found in the Indo-Pacific. Their scientific name is Thalassosoma quintiquevivalantum, which means thalassa means sea in Greek, and soma means body. So basically, sea body, and the species name quintiquevivalantum means 5 stripes. So their 5 stripes means 5 stripes sea body, pretty much. So it's another really cool species. These guys get to about 17 centimeters in length, or about 6.7 inches in total length, and they have colorful bodies that actually are complex and quite variable in colors and pattern. The base color of the body is green with longitudinal or long stripes, as you kind of see going on there, that are red or purple. With the head shown to have various curved purplish lines and spots. So you can kind of see all these spots and things with get the name, the 5-line wrasse. Males can actually sometimes change their color during courtship or while they defend their territory. So there is a lot of aspects in them they're able to change their color. And they do also breed with another closely related species, sometimes called the saddle wrasse, which is another related species that they can breed with. And they are actually commonly found in the aquarium trade. And they are native to the Indian Ocean and the Western Pacific Ocean. And this particular species, in terms of its habitat, inhabits kind of coral reefs and lives in quite shallow water between 1 to 5 meters deep, or about 3 to 16 feet deep, and are seen particularly in areas with surge channels, plentiful algal growth, and acropora coral plates. So kind of those big plates that you see around the place, or those stony corals that you see. So that's kind of areas where they're mostly more common. And they're all coming up to land at the moment for whatever reason, but luckily we've just finished talking about them. So another really cool species done by Jaquatics, always a winner. So next up we're going to be moving from fish and amphibians. We've got a bird this time. You cannot not love birds. We've got here the black scooter. So let's have a look at this beautiful male here. So the black scooter is also known as the American scooter, or Melanandita americana. These are a large sea duck that range between 43 to 49 centimeters, or 70 to 19 inches in length. And the name in Greek literally means black duck, and Americana is Latin for American. So together they are closely related to the Nigeria, the other scooter, the common scooter. And two are considered sometimes conspecific, but they are more of their own thing. These are a large sea duck that is characterized by, you can see it's quite bulky shape and large bill. The adult male, as you can see here, is mostly black with like a big bulbous bill as well, that is mostly yellow, as you can kind of see there. The females are brown with pale cheeks, as you can kind of see here. Brown with pale cheeks, so a little bit more drab as most things. An adult female typically gets about 980 grams on average, or about 2.16 pounds, and 45 centimeters or 18 inches in length. Well, the males are slightly bigger. The males get to about 1,100 grams or 2.4 pounds, and about 49 centimeters or 19 inches in length. So a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier. Not too big of a difference. They can be distinguished from other species of scooter, apart from the common species of scota, by the lack of whites anywhere on the drake. So if you just see one that's completely black, the drake also refers to the male duck. So duck is, female, like cow is. The drake is like, have the bull and the cow. The bull is the drake in ducks. So this is the drake. The drake is completely black, other than the white bit on his bill, but there's no white patches or anything. And the more extensive areas, but the females have extra, kind of as well. So the female has extra. So that's kind of the way that you kind of tell them apart. So if you want to see a female black scota, it is got a lot of white around the face. If it's a male, there's no white at all. as well. But yeah, quite a cool species. And they have diagnostically distinct vocalizations from each other as well. So if you know the difference between their vocalizations, you can tell them apart. So let's have a look at the cute little babies. Why not? Let's have a look at the cute little babies. So in terms of distribution, they breed in the far north of North America, in Labrador and Newfoundland, to the southeast and northwest of Hudson Bay. And they also occur on the Siberian side of the Bering Strait, east of the Yana River. And it winters farther south in more temperate zones, such as the northern US and Canada, on the Pacific coast south of the San Francisco, and then the Atlantic and Gulf of Mexico coasts, and even as far south as China in Asia. That's quite interesting as well. And some will also overwinter in the Great Lakes, and the species is a rare vagrant to Western Europe, with only drakes really surviving or can safely be identified out of their range. So females are likely to be undetected. So usually when they're found in Asia, found in Europe, in Western Europe, it's because the males are easy to tell apart, the females are a bit harder to tell apart. So there could obviously be females hanging around there, but we don't really know because we can't ID them that well. Anyway, in terms of their ecology, we're going to talk about their ecology and a little bit about their anatomy and things like that. They dive for crustaceans and mollusks while migrating or wintering on the sea coasts, and also feed on insects and their larvae, especially caddisflies, fish eggs, and more rarely vegetation such as duckweed, while nesting in fresh water. So they will nest in fresh water. They form large flocks on suitable coastal waters in winter quarters, and they are tightly packed, and the birds tend to take off together. But in the breeding season, they are less social, and have been suggested that coastal waters, these species prefer sheltered embayments and possibly water that includes mixed depths. And they nest later than most other American ducks. Pairs form in late winter to spring. They line the nest. The lined nest is built on the ground close to sea, lakes, or rivers. So typically, sometimes rivers as well. In woodland or in tundra, and typically about 5 to 7 eggs are laid, with each egg being about 60 to 74 grams, or 21 to 26 ounces, and about 8% of the female's body weight. This incubation period may range from 27 to 31 days, and then the female will brood their young exclusively for 3 weeks, after which the still flightless young must fend for themselves. So they pretty much, after 3 weeks, they have to go off and do their own thing. And there's one movement that's pretty interesting that the males do. So let's spot a male and have a look at him, because we like nice, beautiful boys here. They actually perform a diagnostic downward head movement while stretching its wings. So it's something that only black scoters do, it seems. But yeah, really, really cool species. And they are considered least concern, I believe. No, near threatened. They are near threatened. Mainly just because of, climate change, things like that, I can imagine, and habitat destruction will impact these guys, especially if they need clear water or areas near the ocean where, there's prime real estate for, batches and stuff like that. But yeah, really, really cool. Another cool species done. This one was done by Lorby. Lorby always doing a good job. Haven't seen Lorby for a little bit, but I always like to see a Lorby mod. They always make interesting things. But next up, we have got by Sky Polaris, a couple mods today by Sky Polaris. We have got, they're both subspecies of the tiger. We're starting off with an extinct one, sadly. We have got the Bali tiger. So let's have a look at the Bali tiger. So another really cool one here. So the Bali tiger was originally considered its own subspecies of tiger, and may do, depending on what kind of taxonomy you follow. It was formerly regarded as Panthera tigris balicana, as its own population, and lived on the Indonesian island of Bali until about the 1950s, when it went extinct. But most recent taxonomy suggests with the mainland and island subspecies population, this is Panthera tigris sodata, which includes the previous subspecies, the Bali, the Javan, and the living Sumatran tiger. So those are considered the island tigers, and the rest are considered populations of the mainland tiger subspecies. So it does work out either way, but either way, this population is completely extinct. Results of mitochondrial DNA analysis from specimens suggest that these tigers would have colonized these islands within the last 12,000 years. So they would have been a population, that has evolved to be smaller due to insular dwarfism, where big animals will go on islands and become smaller because of a variety of different reasons. But yeah, 1912, they were described by a adult tiger by German zoologist Ernst Schwartz, and he argued that this guy was different from the Javan tiger because of his brighter fur color and smaller skull. But then distinctive was questioned, and they kind of discovered to try and figure out what was questioned. And then a comparative study, as I mentioned, with the microbial DNA suggests that the Bali and Javan tigers and other living tiger subspecies revealed a close relationship between tigers of the Sunda Islands and formed a morphophylogenetic group that was distant from mainland tigers. So that's kind of what's become of the taxonomy, as we mentioned, the mainland and the island tiger subpopulation, or the Sunda Island tigers, which are now the Bali and Javan are extinct, and there's now only the Sumatran tiger. So the Balian tiger is actually described as the smallest of all the tigers of the Sunda Island species, subspecies, or populations. To the 20th century, only 7 skins and skulls of tigers from Bali were found, and are now preserved in museum collections. The common feature of the skull is the narrow occipital plate or plane, which is analogous to the shape of tiger skulls in Java. And skins of males measured between the pegs are about 220 to 230 centimeters, or 87 to 91 inches, from head to the end of the tail. And those of females a bit smaller, about 990 to 210 centimeters, or 75 to 83 inches, while the weights of males ranged from about 90 to 100 kilograms. So males got quite big, 90 to 100 kilograms, 200 to 220 pounds, and females about 65 to 80 kilograms, 143 to 176 pounds. So yeah, not as big as big Sumatra, smaller than Sumatrans, smaller than even Siberians. So they were quite a small population, considering they lived on a small island, even smaller than Java and stuff like that. So that makes sense. Most of the known tiger specimens were found in Western Bali, which lived in mangrove forests, dunes, and savanna, and they likely would have eaten the Javan rusa, but plenty other large species would have been prey for these guys. So, other than most other aspects of their biology, they're not too different from other tiger species, subspecies, and populations, stuff like that. But sadly, they did go extinct. So by the end of the 19th century, palm plantations and irrigated rice fields were established across the Bali's rich volcanic slopes, and tiger hunting started to take over as the Dutch gained control of Bali. And during that colonial period, tigers were pretty much, people would just go and hunt tigers for the fun of it with high-powered rifles. And they would even bait them to kill them. And even some people claim they had killed over 20 tigers in just a few years. In 1941, the first game reserve, now today known as the West Bali National Park, was actually established in Western Bali, but they were too late to save the wild population, sadly. And it was probably eliminated by the end of World War II, that's believed, but there's maybe a few that have survived up until about the 1950s, but no specimen has been found after that. And a few tiger skulls and bones have been preserved in museums, so there is some found of the evidence of these tigers found across the world, specifically in London and even in Borg, Indonesia, and Hungary as well. But they were considered quite a well-renowned animal in Balinese folklore. They were mentioned in traditional arts as Kasman paintings of the Kologun Kingdom. And they considered the ground powder of tiger whiskers to be a potent and undetectable poison for one's foe. And Balinese baby was given a protective antler necklace with black coral and a tiger's tooth or a piece of tiger bone, to kind of, protect them. So it's quite cool, they were quite important contributors. Sadly, they are extinct. I'm sure a lot of people would not appreciate tigers in Bali again, considering I know how many drunk Australians like to go there. But yeah, a rather really cool one. So here, we'll have a look at the cute little babies and then we'll move on. So again, done by Sky Polaris, this chunky little guy. Sky Polaris did not just make the Bali tiger, we've also got the Malaysian tiger, or the Malayan tiger, another population, which is Panthera tigris jacksoni. So these guys are a population that are native, they're a mainland population, they're native to the peninsula of Malaysia, and they inhabit the southern and central parts of the Malayan Peninsula, and are sadly actually considered critically endangered, with estimates as of April 2014 being between 80 to 120 individuals left with a downward trend. So there's likely, this was also, 15 years ago or so that could be a lot less now. So they were originally considered to be a population, their name is Panthera tigris jacksoni, They were proposed in 2004 as a subspecies, but as we mentioned, that other taxonomy would lump them all into Panthera tigris, which is the mainland population. And how it was named, when the tiger population was accepted as distinct subspecies, the chairman of the Malaysian Association of Zoos, Parks and Aquaria argued that it should be named Panthera tigris malayensis because of its region, and often they do that with things like that. But they compromised, calling it the Malayan tiger, and they named it Jacksoni to honor the tiger conservationist Peter Jackson, not the one that made all the Hobbit movies and stuff like that, but an actual genuine conservationist. But there's still Malanaensis actually sometimes used by other authors, but officially it's recognized as Jacksoni, which doesn't really matter because it's all Panthera tigris at the moment. But there really is no clear difference between the Malayan and Indo-Chinese tigers when specimens for two regions were compared, both cranily and in pelt, so there's no type specimen really designated. They're on average a bit smaller than Bengal tigers, from a sample size of about 11 males and 8 females. The average male is about 8'6", or 259 centimeters in length, with the females being about 7'10", or 239 centimeters in length. Body length is mentioned on average as well. Their height ranged from 23 to 41 inches, or 58 to 104 centimeters, and their body weight ranges from 52 to 185, or 24 to 88 kilograms for those females. The males, a little bit bigger, range about 190 to 280 centimeters in length, and average about 239 centimeters, and they would have got between about 104 kilograms to 284 No, 104 pounds to 284 pounds, so between 47 and 129 kilograms. So not bigger than, your Javan and your Sumatran, but smaller than like your Bengals and your Siberians. So their distribution, the geographic distribution between the Malayan and Indo-Chinese tigers is unclear, because obviously historically they would have been pretty contiguous. They abounded on Singapore Island up to the 1830s when it was still a dense jungle. But the expansion of plantations and tiger bounties pretty much wiped them out of Singapore Island. Malaysia as well. There were signs of early excessive vegetation fields in 1991 to 2003, but they're really hurting those populations as well. So basically, they were cut down quite a bit. And in September 2014, they announced these kind of surveys as all these, big plantations and habitat destruction and hunting all came down. It's the stories of tigers all across Asia. But yeah, they brought it down. They estimated the surviving population in 3 separate habitats of about 250 to 340 individuals as of 2019. And poaching and depletion as prey is believed to really dwindled the population down in the Belgian Temple Forest Reserve to about 60 to 23. So that's really a bit of a worry. And there's really not much that habitat left. So confirmed tiger habitat's about 11,655 square kilometers. So that's a bit of a worry there. But in terms of their ecology behavior, not too different from other tiger populations. They like to eat sambar deer, barking deer, Indian hog deer, wild boar, Bornean bearded pigs, and mainland suro, as well as Asian black bear and calves of Asian elephants and also sun bears as well. So the big issue there is threats, their habitat fragmentation. Tigers are big apex predators that need a lot of room to roam, so that's another big issue for them. And because of development between, development and agriculture is quite a serious threat. Between 1988 and 2012, an area of 13,000 square kilometers was lost on the peninsula. That means a lot less tiger habitat, and it was all converted into pretty much palm oil plantations, which means a lot less habitat for tigers. But also commercial poaching was another big issue, because, the demand for tiger bones and tiger skins for, traditional Chinese medicines and things like that, that's another really big issue, and that's caused them as well. But in terms of their conservation efforts, banning all international trade is as well, and trying to ban it as well. The Malayan Conservation Alliance for Tigers is a non-government organization that's dedicated to helping these tigers. That includes reporting tiger-related crimes, like poaching, as well. And in 2021, they actually announced the initiation of 9 conservation strategies to help ensure the survival of the Malayan tiger. These enforce such as patrols to patrol areas of their habitat to make sure there's no poachers, as well. So that's a task force, a national task force for its conservation. That's under the Department of Wildlife and National Parks Peninsular Malaysia Tiger Conservation Unit, which is a wildlife crime bureau to protect them from crime. Also, Malayan tiger habitat accreditation schemes to kind of assess habitats and what's working and potentially, release them into areas. They also cooperate with zoos and universities to further research into inbreeding and try and create a conservation centre that may actually temporarily accommodate tigers before they're released into the wild, and also deer hunting bans and stuff like that to try and really help to increase the populations of the Malayan tiger. So yeah, and they're also considered the national animal of Malaysia, and they're kind of really important for their culture. So it's really cool to see that these animals are getting the protection they need. But yeah, really, really cool. Let's have another look at another cute little baby. How can you not love cute little baby tookers? They are very, very cute. See if we can spot the... Where's the male? Where is he? Where is he? He's probably up there. He's having a sleep. That's where he is. But yeah, really, really cool. Another really cool tiger subspecies. That one was also done by Sky Polaris. So next up, we've actually got a remastered mod. Narwhala's gone back and really done a good job with this one. We have got here the Ethiopian wolf. So this one's got a big remaster from Narwhal. These guys are sadly quite endangered. They are the also known as the red jackal or the Samidian jackal as well. They are a canid native to the Ethiopian highlands. They're even sometimes called the horse jackal. They are similar to a coyote in build and size, but they can be distinguished by its long, narrow snout and red and white fur. So quite cool there. In terms of their historical account, they were first described in 1835 by Edward Ruppel, who sent a skull to the British Museum. And they actually believe the species actually gave rise to greyhounds. But we know greyhounds are all part of domestic dogs and came from wolves and not Ethiopian wolves. They were recognized as requiring protection in 1938 and received it in 1974 to protect them. And the first in-depth studies to kind of study them in the 1980s was on the onset of the American-sponsored Bale Mountains Research Project, which kind of happened as well during the Ethiopian Civil War. And also things such as rabies epidemics and stuff really impacted them. And then they were reclassified as endangered to critically endangered in 1994. And then they kind of tried to use strategies such as education, wolf population monitoring, and rabies control in domestic dogs to help them. And there are some areas where sadly they've gone locally extinct. But they are considered the world's rarest canid and the most endangered carnivore in Africa. So in terms of their evolution, the earliest known fossils of them are actually found date to about 1.6 to 1.4 million years ago, and it's considered half of a mandible. Studies state that the ancestors of Ethiopian wolves actually arrived to Africa from Eurasia at the same time as the ancestors of African wild dogs, and they would have survived a lot of climatic changes in their habitat as well. Though in 1994 they actually found that the mitochondrial DNA suggests they are closely related to grey wolf and coyote, suggesting they came from Asia and from a past invasion. But most recent evidence suggests they are related to dholes and golden jackals and stuff like that. So that's kind of what most recent is considered as well. Due to the high density of rodents in their habitat, they actually evolved to become specialized rodent hunters. So that a lot of their really long nose and stuff like that, as you can kind of see here, is because of, as you mentioned, trying to hunt rodents and stuff like that. Let's see if we can spot there's a alpha male, because he's quite big. Really, really beautiful animal. Did a really good job with this. But during this period, they likely attained the highest abundance and continuous distribution, and did quite well. And they were one of the 5 canis species present in Africa and are readily distinguished from jackals by their larger size. And then studies look into their whole genome of African and Eurasian canids as well, indicated that wolf-like canids would have colonized Africa from Eurasia at least 5 times during the Pliocene and Pleistocene, which is consistent with fossil evidence as well. And according to phylogeny derived by nuclear sequences, the Eurasian golden jackal would have diverged from the wolf coyote lineages just about 1.9 million years ago, and the Ethiopian wolves would have diverged at a similar point in time. So that kind of shows where they are. And there's a couple of different subspecies, but they really don't matter too much. A lot of them are kind of just based on, different coat things and really unreliable distinctions. because subspecies often in large carnivores are, because people just want to have one, we want to have our own subspecies of tiger. No, we want our own subspecies of tiger. But that is what it is. Anyway, they, as I mentioned, are similar in size and build to the North American coyote. They are larger than blackback and side-striped jackals, as well as African wolves, and have comparatively longer legs. They have a very flat skull with a long face, and the ears, you can see, pointed and broad as well. As typical with also the genus Canis, the males are larger than the females, and have a 20% greater body mass. They reach about 841 to 84 to 101 centimeters, or 33 to 39 inches in body length, and about 53 to 62 centimeters, or 21 to 24 inches in height. And adult males weigh about 14 to 19 kilograms, while females weigh between 11 and 14 kilograms. That's 31 to 43 pounds, or 24 to 31 pounds as well. But other aspects, they're not too different from other species of canid. They do have short guard hairs and thick underfur that provides protection from predators and, the elements as well. And you can see the overall colour is ochre or rusty red with dense whitish to pale ginger underfur. And the fur in the throat, chest, and underparts is white, and they have a distinct white band on their side of their necks as well, and also kind of one down their back as well. They have their lips and stuff, and their gums and palate are black. The lips are small spotted cheeks and ascending crescent below the eye are white. They have a thickly furred tail that is white underneath, but has a black tip, unlike most other canids. There is no dark patch marking the subcortical gland, and they molt during the wet season, so around August to October, but there's no evident seasonal variation in their coat colour, though the contrast between the red coats and the white coats increase as they get age and also their social rank, with females tending to have paler coats than males. And during the breeding season, the female coat will turn yellow, becoming woollier, and the tail turns brownish, losing much of its hair. Animals resulting from European wolf and dog hybridizations tend to be more heavily built than pure wolves, have smaller muzzles and different coat patterns. So talking about a little bit about their behavior and stuff like that, the Ethiopian wolf is a social animal living in family groups up to about 20 adults, individuals older than a year old, and packs of up to 6 wolves are considered common. Packs are formed by dispersing males and a few females, with the exception of the breeding female, so there's only one breeding female, the breeding of the other females is suppressed. Each pack will have a well-defined hierarchy, with dominance and subordinates kind of displays being common, and upon dying, the breeding female will be replaced by a resident daughter, though this increases the risk of inbreeding. Such risk is sometimes circumvented by multiple paternity or extra pack, matings. The dispersal of wolves from these packs is largely restricted by the scarcity of unoccupied habitat. In terms of their territories, they have a territory of about 6 kilometers on average. On areas with little food, the species will live with pairs, sometimes accompanied by pups, and defend larger territories of about 13 square kilometers. In the absence of disease, these territories are largely stable, but packs can expand whenever the opportunity arises, such as when another pack disappears. And the size of each territory correlates with the abundance of rodents and the number of wolves in a pack and the survival of pups. Ethiopian wolves will rest together in the open at night and congregate in greetings for border patrols in dawn, noon, and evening. They may shelter from rain under overhanging rocks and behind boulders, and the species never really sleeps in dens and only really uses them for nursing pups. And when patrolling these territories, they will regularly scent mark and interact aggressively with and vocally with other packs as well. In terms of breeding, though, the mating season, we'll have a look at the cute little babies as we talk about their breeding season. I said it's very, very cute. So the breeding season only occurs from August to November. Courtship involves the breeding male following the female closely, and the breeding female only accepts the advances of the breeding male or males from other packs. The gestation period is about 60 to 62 days, with pups being born between October and December. They're born toothless with their eyes closed and are covered in like a charcoal grey coat with a buff patch on their chest and abdomen. These typical litters are about 2 to 6 pups, which emerge from the dens at about 3 weeks old, and then the dark coat is replaced by the adult coloration. By about 5 weeks, they will be eating a combination of milk, but also solid foods, and then be completely weaned off milk at about 10 weeks to 6 months. and all members of the pack contribute to protecting and feeding the cubs, while subordinate females actually assisting the dominant female in suckling them. Full growth and sexual maturity is attained at about 2 years old, and cooperative breeding and pseudo-pregnancy has actually been observed in Ethiopian wolves, so that's quite interesting. Most females will disperse from their natal packs at about 2 years of age and then become floaters that may successfully integrate into another existing pack, with breeding pairs most often being related to each other, suggesting that female bias dispersal reduces in breeding. And inbreeding is ordinarily avoided because it leads to reduction in fitness due to, the same alleles and stuff that become a big issue there. In terms of hunting behaviors, unlike most social carnivores, they actually tend to forage, and so they live socially, but they hunt prey and small prey alone, which is interesting as well. So most are active during the day, in the time where rodents themselves are mostly active, but they observe been hunting in groups when targeting mountain Nyala calves as well. The technique described above, which they typically want to use, so they mostly, when hunting, they'll hunt these kind of rats, and they'll pounce on the rats as well. So the big-headed African mole rats, which they actually will kind of jump on their burrow and start digging to try and get at them. There's a level of area varying from scratching lightly at the holes to totally destroying burrows to try and get at these animals. Wolves as well have been observed to forage among cattle herds, which is a tactic thought to aid in ambushing rodents out of their holes. They've also been seen actually forming temporary alliances with galadas. Solitary wolves will hunt for the rodents in the midst of the monkeys, ignoring juvenile monkeys, though they are similar in size to some of their prey. The monkeys in turn tolerate and largely ignore the wolves, although they take fight if observe feral dogs, which sometimes prey on them. So if they spot feral dogs, they will actually run away, but they let the Ethiopian wolves kind of forage while they're foraging, which is really cool. And within these troops, the wolves actually have much higher success in catching rodents than usual, because the monkeys' activities will flush out the rodents, or because the number of larger animals makes them harder for them to detect. So these guys have a very interesting habitat as well. The Ethiopian wolf is restricted to isolated pockets of Afro-alpine grasslands and heathlands inhabited by these Afro-alpine rodents. The ideal habitat extends above the tree line at about 3,200 to 4,500 meters, with some wolves inhabiting the Bayo Mountains, living in mountain grasslands about 3,000 meters above sea level. But they do prefer these. In modern times, subsistence agriculture, which extends up, actually largely restricted species to higher peaks. But they used to, live pretty much any time between, and above 3,000 meters above sea level. They use all these habitats, all Afro-alpine habitats, but have a preference for open areas covered in short herbaceous and grassland communities inhabited by rodents, which are the most abundant along flat or gentle slopes with poor drainage and deep soils. Prime wolf habitat in the Bayo Mountains consists of short acamella herbs with a low vegetation cover. They also like tussock grasslands and high altitude scrubs and shore grasslands, things like that as well. So they're pretty dispersed in their habitat, but they mainly rely on their prey. So they primarily prey on one species, the big-headed African mole rat. They will also feed on grass rats, black-clawed bush furred rats, and highland hares. That's kind of what they feed on, mostly rodents. They are rodent specialists. But they also eat valley rats, yellow-spotted bush furred rats, and occasionally goslings and eggs. And they've been also observed eating rock hyraxes and mountain Nyala calves and reedbuck calves. But in areas where they're absent, they'll also eat the smaller northeastern African mole rat. In the Samoan Mountains, they will feed on abyssal grass rats, and undigested shade leaves have been found in their stomachs, so they may actually eat these roughage or for parasite control. And they actually have been seen observed consuming the nectar from flowers, the Cynopholla phallesa flowers. This is actually something recent this is part of the reason why I want to talk about these guys. But they're actually the first apex predator in an ecosystem, or the first large predator known to pollinate plants. So I think that's really, really interesting. So these guys are technically pollinators. So I think that's a really, really cool aspect of them. And they do typically, they may scavenge on carcasses as well, but are usually scared away by wolves, golden wolves, or free-ranging dogs. And they typically don't pose threat to livestock. And they'll often, with farmers often leaving herds in wolf-inhabited areas unattended. So these guys don't really hunt big animals. They may maybe try and take a calf or a lamb or something, but they don't typically hunt. So, farmers are okay with them around, so that's quite cool. There are about 6 current populations of them found around, and some of them are, extinct, sadly. But these ranged kind of the biggest population is about 250 wolves, but some areas are as small as kind of 50 wolves or 19 or 23 wolves. With Mount Gada potentially their population going extinct, so they are isolated, which is a bit of a worry. But the main threats they face, they have been considered rare since they were first recorded scientifically, and because they like these alpine habitats, they were probably never really a common species because they were specialized. But historical times, pretty much all their threats and all their decline has been due to people. So big things have been disease. So canine distemper has come from feral dogs, which is naive to these animals, and they get impacted by them. Habitat loss has been another big thing. People taking away their habitats to convert the habitats into barley fields or for grazing. Also population fragmentation because of people and all these farms and things. Because their populations become isolated, which causes inbreeding and all that stuff. Poaching or encroachment, so a lot of livestock populations have been going into protected areas, which is also hurting them as well. Overgrazing by cattle is another big issue as well, causing soil erosion, which means it's habitat for their food. Human prosecution as well. There has been direct killings from people, thinking that they were hunting goats and sheep, but actually they don't really hunt them, and now they don't really care about them. But also another big thing is competition with African golden wolves, which are typically not good rodent hunters, so they tend to avoid each other. But, if there's a carcass, they'll bully them off it as well. And also hybridization with dogs. So there is incidents of hybridization occurring with these wolves and dogs, which could cause issues with breeding, and that could cause conservation issues. But yeah, in terms of conservation, they are listed as CITES, so they're listed. So pretty much, killing one carries a 2-year jail sentence. They do live in several protected areas, and there are steps that are really helping to help these populations, such as sterilizing wolf-dog hybrids, rabies vaccinations in the wolves as well. So they're going out and catching these wolves and giving them a vaccination. So things like that as well, and protecting their habitats, so making sure these areas stay protected, and trying to improve dog husbandry and diseases, so they're trying to help reduce rabies cases. And there actually has been efforts to clone Ethiopian wolves using dogs as surrogates to help conserve the species. So there's very interesting stuff going on with these guys. And I have to say, I really love this nice remastered mod. Definitely did a great job. So yeah, another great one for the Ethiopian wolf, done by Narwhal. Narwhal always doing a good job. So next up, last but certainly not least, we've got Great Cakes mod. Cannot not feature Great Cakes mod in a mod spotlight, it seems. So let's have a look at the golden... No, I don't want to click on you, I want to click on you. That's what I want. The golden eagle, since they've been making a lot of eagles recently. So the golden eagle, or Aquila cryonetes, is a bird of prey that lives in the northern hemisphere and is the most widely distributed species of eagle in the world. In terms of their taxonomy, they were first described by Carl Linnaeus as Falco trinectes, and their type locality is simply given Europa, but they are found across pretty much America, North America, parts of North Africa, Europe, and well into Asia, so they're very, very wide. And Aquila is just Latin for eagle, as Aquilus also means dark in colour, so it's the golden eagle. The golden eagle is part of a group called the booted eagles, that include, as I mentioned before, the crown eagle and other different species and genera of eagles. And the genus Aquila is found on every continent except for South America and Antarctica, and has a bunch of different species like the African hawk eagle, steppe eagles, the wedge-tailed eagle as well. So there's examples there. And there's 6 different subspecies. They all vary in distribution as well, but we're not going to get too much into them, because this is not a specific subspecies, but they live. There's the European golden eagle, which is the type subspecies, Homerinia, which is the Iberian golden eagle, Daphina, which is the Asian golden eagle, also called the Himalayan golden eagle, Japona, which is the Japanese golden eagle, and Canaensis, which is the North American golden eagle, but also Kamachuanensis, which is the Siberian golden eagle. So yeah, there's a few different subspecies described. But in terms of their size, they are a very, very large species of eagle. They get to about 66 to 102 centimeters, or 26 to 40 inches in length. And they have a wingspan of about 1.8 to 2.3 meters, or 5'11" to 7'8". And they are the 5th largest among the living eagle species. So they are quite big. Females are larger than males, with bigger differences in larger subspecies. Females of the Himalayan golden eagles are about 30% heavier than males and nearly 9% longer wings. While the smaller Japanese golden eagles, females are slightly only 26% heavier and have 6% longer wings. So that's kind of, as the differences become less extreme in different subspecies and larger subspecies. That's what they're saying there. The larger subspecies, as we mentioned, the Himalayan one, the females will typically weigh between 4 to 6 kilograms, or about 8 to 14 pounds. And the smaller subspecies, males will weigh about 2.5, and the females about 3.5, so about 5 to 7 pounds as well. But the females, get quite big. In the species overall, the averages is about 3.6 grams, or about 7.9 pounds, and females about 5 kilograms, or 11 pounds. So there is quite a big range there, but on average is about 3 kilos and 5 kilos. So quite big, very, very big. The maximum size is also debated, with larger subspecies the heaviest representative of the genus Aquila, on average the 7th heaviest largest eagle. The golden eagle is the 2nd heaviest breeding eagle in North America, Europe, and Africa, and the 4th heaviest in Asia. So it's, we're always trying to compare eagle sizes. But yeah, really, really cool. In terms of their colour, adults of both sexes have quite similar plumage, and they're clearly dark brown with some grey on the inner wing and tail, and a paler, typical golden colour on their back of their crown where they get their name. And unlike other species of Aquila, they have the tarsal feathers that are typically similar in colour to the rest of their plumage as well, so it's quite interesting. In addition, some actually full-grown birds have white epaulets on their upper bit as well, and they have a yellow cirri. So you can see the cirri is the skin on their beak there. So that they have a yellow cirri, and they've got quite beautiful red eyes. Juveniles are quite similar in appearance, so we'll have a look at a juvenile over here. Doesn't really help, but there's a juvenile. Quite similar in appearance. You can see not really much of a difference, just a little bit duller. Although black can be black on the back in East Asia. So yeah, pretty similar actually in colours in most regards. Not very much change from juvenile to adult, unlike a lot of other kind of species of bird. Anyway, molting. They generally molt between March and April until about September, October each year, and molting usually decreases in the winter. Molts of the contour feathers begin at the head and neck and progress through the feather tract, and in general, front to back direction. Feathers in the head, neck, and back and scapulars may actually be replaced annually. With large feathers of the wing and tail, molt begins on the end of those feathers, and they have what's called a descendant molt. So they kind of innermost feathers will proceed outwards. So it kind of goes from the armpit to the shoulder to the hand. Some species of birds, they all do it in a different way. Penguins, they do what's called a catastrophic molt and just lose all their feathers in one big go. That's why it's catastrophic, it's just a big thing. But really, cool. Anyway, vocalizations, they are not known for their strong voices, but they tend to be silent, even while breeding. But they do have some vocalizations. They actually make quite weak, high, they have a weak voice, high and shrill, and it can actually be considered quite pathetic or puppy-like, even though, considering, these animals are supposed to be big, formidable predators, which is quite funny. They do have chirps and stuff like that, but they're not very chatty birds. In terms of flight, they're actually considered sometimes the best flyers among eagles and perhaps, again, against all raptorial birds. They have broad, long wings with sometimes somewhat feather-like indentations on the tips of their wings. Golden eagles are also unique among their genus, as they often fly in a slight dihedral, which means their wings often held to a slight unturned V-shape. And when they need to flap, the golden eagle appears at their most laboured, but this is less common than soaring or gliding. Flapping usually consists of 6 to 8 deep wing beats interspersed with 2 to 3 second glides. And while soaring, the wings and tail are held on one plane, primary tips of each other. The soaring speed for this species is about 45 to 52 kilometers per hour, or about 28 to 32 miles per hour. And when hunting or displaying, they can actually fly very fast, reaching up to about 190 kilometers per hour, or 120 miles per hour. And when swooping or diving, the eagle will hold its legs against its tail and hold its wings tight, and particularly and partially closed against its body. But when diving for prey, they can reach between 240 to 320 kilometers per hour, 150 to 200 miles per hour. And although less agile and maneuverable, the golden eagle is apparently quite the equal and probably even superior to the peregrine falcon in swooping and gliding speeds. And this makes the golden eagle kind of one of the fastest living animals, which is really interesting. Although most flights in golden eagles have a clear purpose, some flights are kind of, seem to be play and stuff like that. So that's quite cool. I'm not going to talk about distinguishing the different species, and we don't need to talk about that. Habitats and distribution. They are fairly adaptable in habitats, but often reside in areas with a few characteristics. They typically like open habitats. Native vegetation tends to be more attractive to them, so they tend to avoid areas of urban development and stuff like that. So they don't like those kind of areas. In desolate areas like Yukon, they can often occur regularly in roadkill or garbage dumps. But the largest numbers of golden eagles found today are in mountainous areas where they do majority of their hunting and nesting and rock formations. However, they're not really tied to elevation. Just as long as the area is open and has native vegetation where they can fly and, there's plentiful food, they will adapt quite well. So you're not going to find them in rainforests and stuff like that very often. In the Arctic fringes, they can be found across the tundra. So they're pretty much found, as I mentioned, all across Europe and into Asia, so they've got a very, very wide range. And in America, they can be found, in Alaska and Canada, right down into New Mexico and Arizona. They often can also be found in Maine, Maryland, Virginia, so very, very wide range. In terms of feeding, though, there's actually a whole Wikipedia page on golden eagles' diet, but we're going to have a look at the southern one. They usually hunt during daylight hours and have recorded hunting from 1 hour between sunrise to 1 hour after sunset. Their hunting results are actually quite good. About 100 out of 150 attempts, about 20% of these attempts were successful. And a full-grown eagle requires about 230 to 250 grams, or 8.1 to 8.8 ounces of food per day. For the life of most eagles, there are cycles of feast and famine, so they can go up to a week without food and then gorge up to 2 pounds or 900 grams of food in one sitting. So most large predators, they kind of do that gorge, and because they're not as... A great example of, actually, we'll talk about tigers. So tigers and like lions, they only really have like a 5 to 10% success rate, but smaller cats tend to have like a 50% success rate. So because of that, they tend to be what's gorge feeders, because it's, they don't succeed hunting as often, but they have much bigger prey, so they're able to gorge themselves and live off a carcass of a buffalo for a week or something like that, for a few weeks. So that's kind of how they work. They're gorge feeders and not just hunting little things all the time. They have big meals and then have a big time of not eating, for example. But their diet is typically comprised of small mammals, such as rabbits, hares, ground squirrels, prairie dogs, and marmots. They also eat other birds, like game birds, so lots of other game birds, like pheasants and stuff like that. Reptiles and fish in smaller numbers. And they've also been occasionally seen catching large prey, including seals, ungulates, coyotes, and badgers. And they've been known to capture large flying birds such as geese and cranes, as well as other raptors, including owls and falcons. So quite a varied diet there. There is actually one example that I actually think off the top of my head where they were hunting chamois, where they would kind of hunt the young ones. They would just pick them up and throw them off cliffs. So in the right circumstances, they'll pretty much eat anything, really, that's got meat as well. In terms of their movements, despite the dramatic way they attain food, their daily lights is really uneventful. So they kind of, sit on a perch about 78% of their time, about 80% of their day. During the summer, they're kind of mostly, hang around, and then they'll occasionally do a territorial display, but they do have very, kind of boring, quote-unquote, lives. In terms of migration, most populations are sedentary, but some other populations will migrate kind of partially. So it's populations like in Finland or the Mongolian steppes or the North China plains. Even in America, there are some small populations that will migrate. They tend to have territories as well. So they are territorial. They have home ranges between 20 to 200 square kilometers, about 7 to 77 square miles. On average, depending on the population. It depends on, population, but also availability of food. Some areas, such as in Ethiopia, they'll have about 1.5 to 9 kilometers. Some areas, like in California, they'll have up to 137, just because there's a lot less, food. Food is a lot more concentrated in Ethiopia, for example. In terms of reproduction, and there's also another reproduction life cycle. So there's a whole big thing on the eagles, but we're going to go and give them the short version. So we're going to have a look at the baby again. Where are you? There you are, little baby. That's the female. We want the baby. Give me the baby. There we are. So golden eagles, like other eagles, they tend to mate for life, and they will form. The breeding pair is formed by courtship display, where they use undulating displays by both the pair, with the male picking up a small rock or a stick and dropping it over a stiff to catch it mid-air, and repeats this movement. And then the female will take a clump of earth and drops it and catches in the same fashion. So typically we'll build several areas in their kind of territory and use them alternatively through several years. And the nesting areas are characterized by the extreme regality of nesting spaces, and mating and egg laying tends to be variable depending on location. Mating seems to occur about 40 to 46 days before the initial egg laying, and typically they may be held for within the chick may be held within the egg 15 hours before hatching, as well. So they have an incubation about 40 to 46 days. Hatching then accelerates, as a shell is broken in 35 hours, and the chick is completely free from the egg in about 37 hours. The first 10 days, though, they mainly lie down in the nest, and they are capable of preening themselves by the second day, but the parents keep them warm until about 20 days old. They grow considerably, weighing about 500 grams at this point, after, a few weeks, about a pound. At about 20 days of age, they generally start standing, which becomes the main position over the next 40 days. The whitish down continues until about 25 days of age, and then they get their adult feathers. After hatching, 80% of the food items and 90% of food biomass is caught and brought by the adult male. Fledging will occur at about 66 to 81 days, depending on location. And the first attempts of flight can be abrupt, and the young jumping off using a series of short wing beats. And about 20 days after fledging, they'll often do their first circling flight, but they can't gain height as efficiently as their parents until about 60 days of fledging. So it takes them a bit of time, to learn, to fly. Other things in terms of natural mortality, they can be killed by predators or hunting mammalian carnivores such as snow leopards, wolverines, brown bears, and white-tailed eagles. Occasionally, they may be killed by their prey in self-defense. There's actually one killed by a porcupine, and actually one killed by a heron, as well. But in terms of human culture, they have been really fascinated by these golden eagles. In the wild, they typically live. The oldest living wild eagle in North America was 31 years and 8 months old. There's a specimen also living in Europe that lived up to 46 years, so they are quite a long-lived bird. But yeah, as it was going on as well, humans, they've been really kind of fascinated by the golden eagle. Most early cultures kind of consider them, a tribute to a sun god, especially Mesopotamian. They were also a prolific symbol of the Roman Empire. This bird was used often as, kind of a banner for legions. And also during the Industrial Revolution, when sports hunting became widespread, they actually considered these eagles to be a threat to their livelihood, which made it easy for people to kill these powerful birds. And they were, they've had a quite interesting history. But in terms of conservation, at one time they did live across most of temporal Europe, North Asia, North Africa, North America, and Japan. Though they are widespread and quite secure in most areas, in many parts of their range they have had sharp population declines and even been extirpated from some areas. The number of golden eagles at the moment is believed to be between 170,000 to 250,000, with the breeding pairs estimated to be about 60,000 to 100,000, with the largest known range of any member of its family, with a range that covers about 140 million square kilometres. If taxonomic order is considered, it's the second most wide-ranging species of bird of prey, second only to the osprey. A few other species of eagle are numerous, though some species like the tawny eagle, wedge-tailed eagle, and bald eagle have total estimated populations similar to the golden eagle, but in smaller distributions, because the wedge-tailed eagle was only found in Africa. The world's most populous eagle, though, may be the African fish eagle, with a stable population estimated to be about 300,000, but is found solely in Africa. But on the global scale, they're quite common, though there is local populations that have declined. As a whole, they're doing quite well, and it consider these concerns. Great species, and really cool to talk about them. But yeah, we're going to finish this up at the moment, so yeah, we have done a good job with this, I think. So, I want to thank everyone. Thank you, Nicole Lynn. Great to see your first mod from you. Really awesome. Jay Quaddix, you did a good job. Lorby, you did a good job. Sky Polaris, really, really awesome to see some of these kind of subspecies getting a bit of a look in there. No Waller, you did a great job with your Ethiopian wolf. Really gave it a good birthday. And great cakes, great job with your Golden Eagle. I love to see more eagles. Love talking about them. They're just a lot to talk about. That's why these videos have been a bit longer recently. All of them have featured an eagle. But yeah, hopefully we'll get more eagles and get to talk about them more over the next few mod parts. But yeah, hello. Well, not hello. Goodbye. So yeah, I really, really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified of anything. So if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe. And bye-bye.